Daily Rambam for Friday, Chav Tesel, Tafshin Pei, out of Rosh Hashanah, Tafshin Pei Aleph. 9th Perek, Perek Chi of Hilchos, Tefilah, and Berachos Kohanim. So yesterday we learned about the din of Tefilah B'tzibur, Perek 9. We learned about the din of Tefilah B'tzibur, davening with a minyan, davening in a shul, regarding the Shliach Tzibur, and making sure, those that need to be Yotzeh through the Shliach Tzibur, all of that. And now the Rambam is going to run through the Seder of davening, what davening looks like when you're davening as a tzibur, as a minyan. So the Rambam starts with describing Shachris.
Doesn't look like
a bit different. We'll try to comment on the similarities or the differences as much as we can. So the Rambam says like this: Seder Tefilah Tzibur Kachu. This is how it works. So everyone starts off sitting down. Shliach Tzibur Yored Lefnei HaTeva. Shliach Tzibur obviously is the exception. He's going to be standing. So he goes Lefnei HaTeva and he stands above everyone. Now, what does the term Yored Lefnei HaTeva mean? We use it a lot to refer to the shots. What does the term actually mean? And what's Lefnei HaTeva and what's the Yored? So interestingly, if you look up the history, the Teva, as it was in the time of the Mishnayos and earlier generations, earlier eras, is not the Amud, what we call davening for the Amud today. The Teva refers actually to a box where the Sifrei Torah, and that's called the Teva. If you look in Mishnayos, and it talks about they go outside, and a Tainus says they take the Teva outside. It has or selling the Teva, Mesachos Megillah. The Teva is the box with the Sifrei Torah inside, what we call the Aron. And the Chazan stands in front of that Teva, so there's no actual special Amud. That's a later development. What's the Yored? Okay, so 1 second. And the way it was set up, apparently in the old shows, it seems like there were actually benches all around from all four sides, and at some point they stopped putting benches all the way in the front, and at some point it became a permanent Aron. But sort of just the general, someone sitting around with the Teva in the middle. If you look ahead in Perek Aleph, which is the Perek of the second day of Rosh Hashanah, the Rambam himself describes what the show looks like, and it's closer perhaps to what the Mishnayos described than maybe what we're familiar with. So you put the bima in the middle of the show, that's for someone to read the Torah or someone to speak, and then you have the Teva. The Teva has the Sefer Torah, that's also be'emtza, and the entrance of the Teva is facing everybody, and the back is to the Hilchos. So the Hilchos implies there is also a larger Aron, maybe where the Sefer Torah are permanently, and then before davening, you take the Sefer Torah out of the Hilchos and you put it in the Teva. So that way, when it comes time, you just open the Teva and you lay in maybe straight from inside the Teva, the way the Sfardim do. And then it describes how the people are sitting. So the Skanim, they're sitting on Mizrach and they're facing everyone, and everyone else are sitting in rows facing the front. And it sounds like there's 2 rows, and then there's like an empty aisle down the middle, and that's where the bima is, and that's where the teva is, and that's where the heichal is. So the word be'emtza over here, be'emtza ha'am, or over there, be'emtza doesn't necessarily mean smack in the middle of the whole room. It means probably in the middle row.
It would mean that the chazan was in the middle of the shul.
Yeah, well, not smack in the middle of the entire. That's bima is be'emtza habayis. The bima is probably smack in the middle of the whole room, and the teva is further in front, but in the middle, the people are sitting on either aisle. That's how the Rambam is describing it in Perek Aleph. That's more or less the way it is in Chazal. The term Yored, so that's interesting because you look at Mishnayos, actually the term in Mishnayos is always Over Lefnei HaTeva. And then in Talmud Bavli, you start seeing this term Yored, and even the Brises in Talmud Bavli, the different chikrim of trying to figure out did something change, or something physical change? Was it Eretz Yisrael, was it up, and in Bavel was it down, or some other chiluk like that? And we can't get into that, but it's just worth noting. So that's the term Yored Lefnei HaTeva. So he goes to wherever he's supposed to be, and he stands in the middle, in the aisle in the middle between everyone. Umaschil v'omer Kaddish. And how does davening begin? Davening begins with Kaddish. Which Kaddish are we talking about? The Kaddish that we can call the Kaddish after Yishtabach. Meaning, according to the Rambam, even if you already mentioned earlier that we do say P'sukei D'Zimon and Baruch Shem and Yishtabach, but Tefilah B'tzibur, for the purpose of Tefilah B'tzibur, it starts from this Kaddish. Oinem Amen Yesh Merab Mevarach B'chol Kayichan. They answer Amen Yesh Merab with all their power. But Oinem Amen Mesef Kaddish and say Amen at the end. So this is interesting. It sounds like you're only saying Amen Yesh Merab and Amen at the end. And actually, if you look at the Kaddish itself, that's actually what it says clearly in Kaddish. It says V'imru Amen twice. V'imru Amen Yesh Merab and V'imru Amen at the end. However, in Seder Tefilah of the Rambam says on the Shliach Tzibur says Yiskad V'Yiskada Shmeraba. Everyone says Amen. And then when he says V'imru Amen, everyone says Amen Yesh Merab. And then when you say Yisbarach according to the Rambam, you say Amen. And when you say Brichu, you say Amen. which is Chabad's only one of the few that say Amen after Brichu. The Rambam says to say Amen there, and then you say Amen at the end. Because we are almost like that. We also say Amen 5 times, but we say after V'yatzach Perkane V'kar Meshiche, which is missing in Ashkenaz. They don't say V'yatzach Perkane at all. The Rambam actually has V'yatzach Perkane in his Kaddish, but no Amen there. And we don't say it after Yisbarach, after the Chazan says Amen Yishmer Abba. But regarding the stira, why does the Rambam make it sound like only one Amen Yishmer Abba here and 5 over there? It's possible that here he's just talking about the Seder at Tefilah. For the purpose of Seder at Tefilah, it's just important to mention Amen Yishmer Abba and the Amen at the end. And over there he got into more details. Try to explain it other ways if you'd like. That's the case. Then we got the Baruch Hu, as we're familiar. Umaschul Peiris al Shema b'Koil Ram, and now we got to Peiris al Shema. So that means we're doing Berchas Kriya Shema, up to Shema Berchas Kriya Shema. It's called Peiris al Shema. He does it out loud. Yesterday we asked what's the term Peiris al Shema. What is that? What does the word Peiris actually mean? So if you actually feel, I said yesterday, if you look in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and Siman Samach Tes, that's where he has a siman on Peiris al Shema. So if you look there, the Alter Rebbe brings 2 explanations for the term Peiris al Shema. Rashi's understanding of Peiris al Shema is actually that everyone davened already, but Yachid, and they want to still chaparayin and have a Tefilah b'tzibur. So what you do then is someone says Kadosh Baruch Hu and just the first bracha of Shema Yetzer a second time. And then you stop there and you jump to Shemona Esrei, and that's what Rashi says is called Peiris al Shema. So Peiris over here means to cut, chaticha, prusa. So you're cutting just Yetzer out, and then you jump to Shemona Esrei. Then the Alter Rebbe brings the second shita, which is from the Rambam over here in Hilchos Tefilah, that Peiris al Shema is every day. No one daven yet. This is Tefilah b'tzibur. Someone comes and says Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then Berchas Kriya Shema, and everyone's listening and answering Amen, like the old fashion where everyone's just listening passively and answering, and that's how they're Yetzer. And in that case, Peiris is Melashon Prusa v'Hatzah. So I think I said similar to what I said yesterday. You're sort of spreading it out. You're laying it out. Peiris Misader Lefnei Kriya Shema. You're going through everything. You're saying it out loud for everyone to hear. That's and he says you see Yivarech Hazavach Targumai Arehu Yifreis Zivchos is an association with Yivarech and Yifreis, and that's for those who aren't Baki. Now that everyone's Baki, so we have Kaddish and Baruch Hu, and then everyone says Berchas Kriya Shema themselves. So that's technically no one's really being Peiris al Shema. Although obviously we still have a Chazan who's saying out loud some of it, but that's not what the original concept of Peiris al Shema was. That's what the Alter Rebbe writes over there.
Why over here the Rambam only mentions 2 Amens versus the 5. It seems because there are 2 Ve'imru Amens.
Right, I mentioned that.
Were the original ones.
Right.
Right. You see that the other Menhagim, not everybody agreed to it, but these 2 were the original.
Fine, it's still a bit of an inconsistency within the Rambam itself, though.
Here he's talking to Hilchos.
Okay.
He's talking
He brings in the Lechem Mishnah.
Yeah,
talks about.
So the Lechem, the Lechem Mishnah, the other first they mention it, and Lechem Mishnah says he's relying on what it says over there. All right. So anyway, so over here, the Rambam is saying Peiris al Shema b'Kol Ram, because we're still going with the old system where he has to say every single word out loud and everyone has to listen to every single word. And then they say Amen wherever appropriate after each bracha. And if you happen to know Berchas Kriya Shema by heart, you could say it. Then you say it along with them until you get to the end of Berchas Kriya Shema. That's like reminiscent of how the Sfardim do it today. The idea being that the shot says every word out loud, which is based on this original idea that you're actually being mighty everybody by saying every word out loud, and therefore whoever is actually reading it along with him would also be saying every word along with him. That way you're on the same page. Move along together. And then you get to Gal Yisrael. Now in the case of Mishnah he says that some Svarim say Achim Mevarach Gal Yisrael Amen. And he says, I say it's a mistake. If you look in Hilchos Brachas there, that Ram talks about Kol Ha'eina Amen Acher Brachasa. If you're saying Amen after yourself, usually it's wrong. Except if it's the end of a series of brachas, then it's a good idea. So that's why Beinu Yerushalayim and benching, we say Beinu Yerushalayim Amen. And he says also after the bracha Achreina of Kriya Shema and Arvis, which we don't do. And that's where the whole discussion of Gal Yisrael fits in. And if we learn that Perek together, we'll discuss it there. Right. Not Gal Yisrael. We don't. It's not. We have to move on over here. So anyway, my Rambam and the Kisvayat apparently doesn't say Amen anyway, so that's not a problem. Halacha base. As soon as you get to that point, so now everyone stands up, immediately misbal and balachash, and they daven quietly. And whoever doesn't know how to daven, even the Vishaysik stands and it's quiet. Now it's interesting because in the previous halacha, it sounded like the default is that you're not saying, you're just listening. And if you know how to read, then you say along. Here, the default sounds like you are saying it quietly. Everyone's daven balachash, and if you don't know, then you're quiet. Possible that maybe more people knew Shemoneh Esrei by heart than Berachas Kriya Shema. So maybe it was more common that Berachas Shemoneh Esrei everyone by default daven, and Berachas Kriya Shema maybe less likely. I don't know. We couldn't do it. Akopanim, the guy who's Einei Yodei L'Spal is also Oimed V'Sheis. He has to stand. Everyone is standing, even the one who's standing there and waiting for Chazar Sashat. Right. Right. Okay. Until the Shliach Tzibur also davens quietly with everybody. Now, first of all, it sounds like he stands even for Chazar Sashat. And I'm just going to say everyone stands for Chazar Sashat as well. So what's the Ad Sheyispal? It's either the Shaisik, stand quietly until the Chazan finishes and starts, or it's generally he's waiting. Now, yesterday I mentioned from the Alter Rebbe Rosh Hashanah that the Shatz daven Tefilas Lachash Kedei Lahaster Tefilah, that he's going through the davening to get it straight. But if you look in the Gemara, the source is really regarding Rosh Hashanah. Magen Avraham says it's really regarding Rosh Hashanah. So why is the Chazan davening quietly? And Bechlal, there's a whole discussion of what's the main thing. Is the Tefilas Lachash the main thing? Is the Tefilah B'tzibur the main thing? There are famous shuvas from the Rambam on this topic. One of them actually is especially regarding Musaf for Rosh Hashanah, which is maybe relevant this year. You also have a sikh, look at the sikhs Chelek of Daled. Elul, a whole sikh where the Rebbe talks about Ram Gamliel and the idea of Kamos versus Eichos. Is the Tefilas Lachash more important? Is the Tefilas Tzibur more important? And Machlekes, V'cham and Gamliel, Kamos, Eichos, Ayin Sham. I'll just quote a little bit from the Chuvas of the Rambam because they're very classic Chuvas. There's one question where they asked the Rambam, can we just get rid of the whole Chazar Sashat? Everyone in our shul is Bucky, so why are we just daven Balachash together and go home? So the Rambam answered, the answer is that because of Cham or Matakin to have a shot, if someone's not Bucky, and according to Ram Gamliel, Lo Haitzi, even a Bucky that didn't daven, he can still listen. So, Leitiyah Tefilah Shliach Tzibur Barach Levatala B'Shum Panim. It's never a Barach Levatala. They were arguing, it's a Barach Levatala. Well, he's not being made to anybody. It's never Barach Levatala because that Takana made it, that's what you have to do, and that's it. Even if there's, in this Tzibur, there's no one who was in Yaitza, that's it. It gives other examples. There's Kiddush and Shul. We don't do it anymore, but there was a minute to make Kiddush, comes from Chazal, make Kiddush in Shul Friday night for the Urchim. So he says they do it in every Shul, even if there aren't any Urchim. He says also Chazaras, Tefilas, Arvis, Leil Shabbos, which we're going to learn about later in this Perek, the Me'ain Shava after Maida Friday night. He says even if no one came late, even if there's no reason, you still say it. And he says anything that was Niskam and Pnei Siba, it doesn't mean that we wait to see does the reason apply or not. It means you should always do it. Maybe the Siba, maybe it will actually be helpful for that. The original Siba will actually kick in. That's the reason why you should always do it. It's very important because otherwise it's going to be just nastu divrei l'shiyurin. Every time you have to start checking: is there someone in the shul? Is there not? That's a very fundamental idea of the Rambam, and the Alter Rebbe actually brings us as an entire seif in Siman Kuf Chav Daled. The Alter Rebbe brings this whole idea as its own seif. It's a very fundamental idea. Another truth of the Rambam is people wrote the Rambam. They said that they have a minute. They don't daven Musaf Rosh Hashanah quietly. They go straight into Chazar Sashatz because everyone's used to speaking the whole year during Chazar Sashatz. And Musaf Rosh Hashanah, you don't want that. So what we have to do is no one will daven Tefilas Lachash, and everyone's going to have to be quiet and listen to Chazar Sashatz because this time it's for real. So the Rambam writes the Mashis Kartem with this idea: Minig Nochenu She'ein Bei Shum Daifi. It's a great idea. V'chein Re'inu HaMinig B'chol Makom Asher Avarnu Bai. This is the minig everywhere the Rambam says. And then the Rambam says, I took it to the next level. My minig is because I see how everyone mamish is davening the Chazar Sashatz. It's so terrible what's going on during Chazar Sashatz. So what I do is, the Rambam says, not just what you do for Musaf Rosh Hashanah, I do it for Shachris Musaf of Shabbos, Shachris Musaf of Yom Tov. If Mincha is running late, if we're davening Mincha very late, you might not have enough time. So whenever there's a reason, just say, you know what, the Shliach Tzibur right away starts with Kol Ram, and Misha Ene Baki, whoever can't daven. Yeah. So everyone who's not Bucky can listen. Whoever is Bucky will daven along with the Shliach Tzibur Mila B'Mila. No, you're not saying it. If you know how to say it, say it. But one big tefillah, everyone together. He says why? Because he goes into great details. No one's listening. Or they walk outside and it's Kamara Barach Levatala because no one's listening. And says even the people that aren't Bucky, in the time of the Rambam, let's say there's still people who aren't Bucky that could actually use the shots to be Yaitza. When they see the Talmid Chacham are talking, the Kachim, Barakim, and they're coughing and spitting, and doesn't look like there's anything going on. So they certainly don't look like they're davening, participating in davening. So they also do that, and then no one thinks it's a davening, and everyone thinks the lachash is the main thing. And there's a concept of certainly for something like this, it's not mamish hefedu teresecha. It's just a kanas Tefilah, and it's going to eliminate the chilul Hashem. And he writes in another tshuva even more explicitly. He says the goyim, the Muslims, they're already talking. There's already buzz that the Jews don't respect davening. They're not taking davening seriously. They all see it. They're all witnesses. So that's another reason to do this. But then the Rambam says, if it's a regular weekday and it's a small crowd, then on the Makayim Matakana Harishayna, then we go back to the original Takana, there's Lachash and Karam. There's all the shuvas about this, and there's also whole discussions, articles about what happened in Egypt after the Rambam passed away, because the minig lingered for a few generations, and then they eliminated it. A whole piece of history there. You also have the concept of Heiche Kedusha, which maybe Litvish yeshivas are into, certain people are into, where they just do mincha, they just do the beginning out loud, and then they all continue quietly. Not going to get into that. Let's move on over here. So that was with regard to the Shlech Tzibur davening balachash with everyone else. And whoever finishes, now everyone's quiet, so they're not davening all together at the same time. Everyone's at a different pace. So whenever you finish your tefillah, take 3 steps backwards. But then you have to stand there in that spot that you took 3 steps back. You have to stand there until he'll tell you to go back in halacha dalet. Halacha gimel. When the shliach tzibur finishes his tefillah and takes his 3 steps back, maschel, he starts right away. Of course, we discussed in the past about the whole concept of waiting. Should we wait for someone? Should we not? But here the Rambam just says the shliach tzibur finishes, he walks back, maschel, and then he starts saying Shemona Esrei again out loud. For the benefit of those who didn't daven, they have to be yaitze now. And again, everyone's still standing this entire time, and they're listening. They say amen to each of the Shemona Esrei brachas. Doesn't matter whether you're being yaitze now or not. Everyone has to stand and say amen. If you look at Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, the Rabbi says yesh omrim. Yesh omrim, I think it's from the Makar, is the Rambam Takash. Kolam yamdu k'shechezer hashatz hatfilah. One should stand when during chazaras hashatz, because you're being mechaven and you're listening. V'shemeya ka'ena, it's as if you're davening again almost. He says that's why the tkiyas on Rosh Hashanah by chazaras hashatz are called tkiyas d'mu'umid. Why are they called tkiyas d'mu'umid? Why is this tkiyas d'mu'umid and this is called tkiyas d'mu'umid? Tkiyas d'mu'umid because the assumption is that everyone's standing by chazaras hashatz. Chazaras hashatz is the time you stand. Also, many other halachas there in Simcha Chav Daled, all relating to chazaras hashatz. The most famous one of the most famous ones, is to scream yesh ligar ba'anashim that are learning during chazaras hashatz, even if they're doing something else that's positive. Technunim, even if they're making sure to say amen at the right time. Because again, the Amei Aretz, what are the Amei Aretz going to learn? They're going to do Sicha B'Teila, so Timach Yesharam. Halacha Daled, Ba'emer Kedusha V'Rach Shlishis, so during chazaras hashatz, in the middle of Ata Kadosh, sort of the beginning of Ata Kaddish, but it's considered part of the bracha of Ata Kaddish. You have the Kedusha in bracha shlishis. Once the shliach tzibur reaches Kedusha, then everyone can take their 3 steps back, forward, return to their spot where they daven. And when the shliach tzibur reaches Moedim and he bows, so kol am sheikh ma'at, everyone bows just a little bit. It shouldn't be too much. Now, regarding the reshus, so the Rekha mentions why do you have reshus now to go back to your place? He says, until then, why do you take 3 steps backwards? To say goodbye. Shari nifter. If you walk right back, it's not, you didn't say goodbye. You are saying goodbye. By the time the Sheikh Tzibur gets the Kedusha, now you can go back to your place. The lo yishchu yasam midai. Why shouldn't you bow too much? The Mishnah says because they already davened. And the reason why they're bowing now is simply shaloi yirok kaifrim. It's if someone's saying maidim and you're not bowing, so it looks like you're a kaifer. You're not agreeing with the maidim. So you're just sort of a gesture. You're just trying to show that you're agreeing, you're agreeable, you're participating. So for that you show a little bit. And if you're bowing a lot, it looks like you're overdoing it. Why are you overdoing it? Now he says the lashon. Al she'onu meidim lach. That's the nusach of the Rambam, pretty similar to what we say. Chol ha'omer meidim eshat kanes. If you say a double meidim, then you're silenced because the Mishnah says looks like you're there's two rishuyas. You're interacting with two meidims. Who's it for? Halacha hey. And once he finishes chazaras hashatz, yeshav yipol al panav v'yatem ma'at hu b'chol hatzibur v'yischanan v'hu neifel. He's describing the Tefilah sapayim, which we already described in Perek Zayin for a yachid, and now we're describing it again in similar words for the tzibur. Then v'yeshav v'yagbir reishehu v'sharam, and you lift your head u'mischanan ma'at b'kodam v'yeshav, and then you say a little more tachnunim out loud. But he's the chazan now, so he has to say the tachnunim of with his head up already out loud. Well, he's still sitting for that part. And then, and now, so before the Shemoneh Esrei, everyone was sitting except the shots. By Shemoneh Esrei, everyone was standing. By Tefilah sapayim, everyone was sitting. And then now the Tzibur gets up again, just himself. Kaddish Pam Shnia, the second Kaddish of davening. And they respond the same way. Now, the V'hurachim that he's talking about here is basically like the V'hurachim that we say for Ma'ariv. We only have V'hurachim for Ma'ariv, but as we're going to see, in the Rambam's davening, you have V'hurachim now, and then Tefilah David, which is what we call Ashrei, Hu Eimed Ve'en Yeshvin. Again, he's standing there sitting, Ve'en Karen Imay, and they're saying it along with him, if they can. V'achar kach, Eimer, Uvalet Si and Goyel, V'anizes Prisi Yisam, those psukim, then the pasuk V'ata Kaddish, and then the Kaddish Zel Zeh, which is the Kedusha from Yeshaya. The Goymer Kedusha, he says the whole Kedusha, and it's responsive. They respond and say Kaddish 3 times in response to him saying the Kedusha from Yeshaya. Yeah, the other places, yeah, they say it. The Chayzer V'Kreidei Kedusha Targum, and then he says it in Aramaic, or Mekablan Dein and Dein. Then he says the Psukim from Yecheskel, the Kedei Targum, then he says the Taltani, that's our Nikud in the Siddur and Taltani, we say the Targum of that. Hashem Yemloich. And then the Kedei Targum, we say Hashem Chusei Kedei Lahav La'am. It's the translation is assuming that the people in Aramaic better than Hebrew, so for some reason we want them to understand this in their language. Now Tefilah David, earlier in Perek Zayin, he only mentioned saying Tefilah David. Here he mentions V'hurachim and he mentions Uvalet Zion. So seemingly the difference seems to be, according to the Rambam, between Yachid and Rabbim. So for example, you look over there, even by Birchas Yaitzer, the Rambam said that when a Yachid says Birchas Yaitzer, you should skip the Kedusha and Birchas Yaitzer because a Yachid doesn't say Kedusha. So according to the Rambam, presumably a Yachid shouldn't say Uvalet Zion because the whole point is the Kedusha, and a Yachid shouldn't be saying the Kedusha. So Yachid would only say Tefilah David, and the shots you say it all. Ve'elo apsukim shelafnei Kedusha v'shelachareh. In Targuman, and that whole thing that we call Uvalet Zion, and in the Quran, Seder Hayoyim, it's what we call in the Rambam, and elsewhere, the Seder Hayoyim. He's going to use that term later on when he refers to it again. And then you say those additional Tachnunim that he also mentioned in Perek Zayin, whatever additional Tachnunim you want to say afterwards, nothing set that the Rambam wants to say as a set practice. Then there's your final Kaddish, your third and last Kaddish of davening, and everyone responds again, as we said, and then they go, similar to what he said in Perek Zayin regarding if you say Tefilah David, and then you go. That's the end of davening. Halacha Zayin. So that's the connection. We just were talking about the tachanunim after davening. So the Rambam says, Kol emer b'tachanunim. If you say it in that context, where else would you say this? I guess in that. That he, Hashem, who was merciful on the nest, that you shouldn't take the mother where all the children are there. Hashem was merciful. He said not to shech the parent and the child on the same day. He should also have mercy on us. Anything along those lines. We silence him. We say stop. Because that's not demonstrating Hashem's mercy. It's just Hashem's gzeira, not expressing mercy. If Hashem was trying to be merciful, we'd all be vegetarians. We'd be against slaughtering, which we're not. So don't invoke that claim Hashem is merciful. Just don't bring that up. And also don't add extra adjectives for Hashem. You're overdoing it. Don't say all those terms. It's like a gift. If a person can't, was never going to really exhaust the real amount of praise Hashem really deserves. So what are you gaining by adding? Just stick to whatever Moshe Rabbeinu said, and that's it. Now it's interesting that the Rambam brings these halachas in the Kan Sipur in the Perek on Chazaras Hashatz. right? And even here, he's talking about the shot. Kol Eimer b'Tachanunim. It sounds like he's talking about the shots. He's the Eimer over here. If you look in the Mishnah, Lav Dafka, it's talking about the shots. And you look at Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. First of all, Shulchan Aruch does not brought at all. Interestingly, the Magen Avraham brings it. Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring this whole thing. Alter Rebbe brings it in Hilchos Shmoneh Esrei, not Chazaras HaShatz. Now, it could be that what says Meshatkin. So it could be that Rambam understood that they were silencing him. It must have been something out loud. Only the Chazan speaks out loud. So Meshatkin him. Now, Alter Rebbe maybe assumes that it's just an expression that if someone were to hear such a thing, we have to shush him. Not that literally it's someone that's Dafka saying it out loud, perhaps. And regarding adding the kinuyim, so the Alter Rebbe says in Siman Kuf Yud Gimel, he brings like that you shouldn't add kinuyim. Then he says, and Shmoneh Esrei. Then in Shmoneh Esrei, we should just say Akel Agad Lagiv B'Noira and not add Hachazak and Shmoneh Esrei. But in your own Tachnunim, you could be Marba and Tayarim. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. V'yesh Oisrin, and that's the Rambam over here. That B'chol Indian, you should never add. But here the Rambam is talking about Tachnunim. The Rambam brings the Gabi Tachnunim. It's all anything you say about Hashem is just really just insulting. So. It's like a mashal malach that has thousands of gold coins, and you say, "Well, you have so much silver; it's insulting. Why are you even mentioning it?" It says over there that all praise is not outside of chiyuv. We're not actually making a positive description. It's outside of shlila to say that Hashem isn't the opposite. But there, says the ikar kisvara and that's why, of course, we have all kinds of tachnunim. Anenu, we say anenu, and we say anenu this, anenu. We give Hashem all kinds of titles in anenu. So, and other tefillahs like that. However, if someone wants to I don't know, maybe on your own, you want to elaborate, better to just use psukim, then you're okay. That's it. Tefillas mincha. So again, you start mincha with v'hurachim, and then Asher Yesh V'Yisacha. Here's the only place actually where the Rambam mentions the psukim of Ashrei. Asher Am Shekach Eloi. And then Tefilah LeDavid. So Kairei Hu V'Alma Yushav, they're all saying it while they're seated. So that's it's interesting. So Psukkah the Zimra and Shachris, though, he doesn't even mention regarding the Chazan at all. It's not even like Tefilah B'Tzibur. So here, Ashrei, though, seems similar to that, but here at least they're saying it together. But the Chazan is sitting. Okay, it's interesting. And then they stand up after him. So here, interestingly, earlier by Shachris, he didn't say they stand by Kaddish. Here he says they stand up. So it could be, sounds like but they did. So it could be because Shmoneh Esrei comes right after it. So that's why you're already standing up in the middle of Kaddish. Whereas by Berachos Kriya Shema, you're not standing up for anything, so you don't stand up by Kaddish according to the Rambam. V'spal and kulan balachash yidav quietly. V'achar chayzik shtei chtzibah mispal v'koram kadech shas b'shachas yem chatzar sashatz ad shiyash miskol tefillah to get to the end. V'yeshav hu v'hein lios adam and if no pnein tefillas apayim u'mischanin and tachnunim magbi areishu hu v'hein and they lift their heads u'mischanim at miyushav kadech shas b'shachas and you have the seated tachnunim with your head up. V'emer kaddish and he stands and says kaddish v'chol amein and kedarkim and iftarnim and they all answer and they go home because that's the end of mincha. Now, Ma'irav, Ba'arav Tas, Ba'arav Kol Am Yeshvin. Ma'irav, we all start off sitting. He stands up already and says, V'hurachim, Baruch Hashem and Vayrach, straight into Baruch Hu, no Kaddish, V'hinayim Baruch Hashem and Vayrach and Vod, U'mas Chulif Risal Shema, and then again you have the Berachos Kriya Shema, V'emer Kaddish, the Kaddish between Berachos Kriya Shema and Shmoneh Esrei, unlike by Shachris, that's where you have the Kaddish. Then everyone davens quietly. When you're finished, that's it. Emer Kaddish, you say Kaddish, Rein of Taran. There's no Chazaras HaShatz here, as he's going to explain momentarily. He doesn't do Chazaras HaShatz from Ma'irav. What's the reason? He says Ma'irav wasn't really an obligation. So even if someone there didn't daven, but you can't call his lack of davening a chiyuv. Even though nowadays you say everyone has to daven, but for some reason, if someone can't read, we don't call his lack of davening not meeting a chiyuv. So if there's no chiyuv, then there's nothing that causes the chazan to say it for him. He's not being mitzi anybody. They're chayva. There's no chayva over here. That's the interesting halacha. We keep the original category. Halacha yod b'shleil Shabbos chayz shliach. This is for Shabbos. Shabbos chayz shliach tzibur achas shmisal balachas shematzim mispal b'korom. Aval ein mispal shava. Ela bracha achas me'ena shava kacho emna. Right. So we don't say the full Chazaras HaShatz. We have the short one. He says Baruch Hashem Elokeinu K'nei Avosenu K'Avram Kitzur K'Yaakov K'El Agad L'Yiv V'Noira K'Elyon K'Rein Barachim Shemaim V'Aretz Gimel San Tov K'Nei HaKol. So that's for the first bracha. Magen Avis B'Dvarei, that's for the first bracha. B'Chayim Meis M'Amorei, that's for the second bracha. Hamelcha Kodesh Kamoi, that's for the third bracha. Hamaniach La'ama B'Yem B'Shabbos Kodshei, Givam Ratzu Laniach Lahem, that's the middle bracha of Shabbos. The fun of Nav of Yibra Facha, that's Ritzei. The end of Shmuel Chayim Tov Me'ena bracha is Me'ena bracha, that's Moedim. Adonai Shalom is Sim Shalom. And then you continue with Shviyim Mekadosh Shabbos, Hamaniach Lush Lamush Neinu Zech Mas Beishus. And then you go into the Kedim Mekavi Sinners in Nunu Chusinu. You end up Baruch Hadash Mekadosh Shabbos, V'Em Nakadosh. B'Chol Am Neftar Neven goes on. V'Lam Tikun Hacham. So what do you have this takana? Most people come, and Rashi explains in the Gemara Shabbos that on a regular night, most people don't come. A lot of people don't come. On Shabbos, everyone's coming. So the year Shamisha is Achar. Obviously, you have someone who came late. But he didn't finish davening yet. The Yishar the basic will be the last one left in shul. But Yavad Sakana will end up in danger. He's alone. That's where we add this extra chazaras hashatz, a mini chazaras hashatz, which is akfu kol ha'am, so everyone is delayed until even the stragglers can all leave at the same time. And the Alter Rebbe talks about in Simirish Samachas, and you don't say, if you want to, what about a Yachid? The Yachid doesn't say the beginning and the end, we just say the middle, Magen Avis, Tozerich L'Ma'aseh Bereshis, that you can say. Then there's a whole discussion about basic Nesses Kavua, which we had this year. Do you say it if you're davening and not basic Nesses Kavua, etc. Halacha Yud Beis. So therefore, if it's also another occasion, Shabbos Yom Kippur Shchedesh, you don't add Mekadosh HaShabbos Yisrael V'Azmanim. If it was just for that other day, we wouldn't be saying this bracha mein Shabbat. The Alter Rebbe says in Hilchos Shabbos, and Yom Tov they didn't come to Ma'ariv. They only had a problem on Shabbos, so you only say Mekadosh Shabbos. Loch Yud Gimel. So on Shabbos Yom Tov, when you finish the Chazaras Hashatz, you say Kadosh Achar Chayda Til LeDavid, and you say Ashrei Vaymer Kadosh U'Mispal Musaf B'Lacha Shem Ashrei straight into Musaf. B'Chayzer Mispal Musaf B'Kol Adam. That shows B'Shabbos quiet and loud. Vaymer Kadosh Achar Til Musaf. And then the Kadosh after Musaf, everyone goes home. In Eimin Kedusha, V'Lei Tachnunim Achar Tefillah Shachas Kishar Yom. You don't say Uvalat Tziyin. We say it before Mincha instead. Alter Rebbe says in Simon Rish Tadik Beis, because Shachar is so long, let's move it to Mincha. Okay, so Kaida Til LeDavid. The Emer said that you have very different Tachnim say Asher, Uvalat Tziyin, Vaymer Kadosh, Mispal and Mincha. That's Mincha. B'Chayzer Mashmir Tefillah Mincha B'Kol Ram. Then you have Chazaras Hashatz Mincha. Vaymer Kadosh, you say Kadosh after that, and that's Mincha of Shabbos. Dalet to conclude. B'Rashi Chadashim V'Chulish Shal Moed. Emer said that Yom Achad Tefillas Musaf. According to the Rambam, we say it before Musaf. But according to the Rambam, you say Uvalat Tziyin after Musaf and Shchedesh and Chol Moed. U'Mitzvah Shabbos, Emer said Yom Gam Achad Tefillas Erev. We say Uvalat Tziyin also after Ma'ariv. Amatzah Shabbos, Emer Kadosh, V'Achar Koch Mavdul. Then you make Havdalah.